Hi, good morning, and welcome back to the Keys History and Discovery Center. I'm Curator Bertelli, and we're going to continue our talks on about some of the great local history. Again, if you have any questions, Erin is manning the Facebook page, so she'll be able to relay any questions you may have while we're talking live, and if not, I will be sure and get back to them later on this afternoon. So today we're going to talk a little bit about pirates and pineapples, or pineapples and pirates. Can't remember which goes first. They all kind of meld together for this one. Pineapples were a really important cash crop in the Florida Keys. I know when people think of the Florida Keys, they don't think farming, but farming was the industry that really the backbone. While wrecking was the backbone of industry in Key West, here in the Upper Keys, while there was a lot of wrecking going on up here, farming was the primary, the primary mode of work, for bringing in cash and also for feeding your family, and also for trading amongst your friends and family, and then also for sales to the markets, both in New Orleans and then also on the West Coast. On the East Coast, New York, Boston, Philadelphia. Pineapples were kind of really the original big cash crop. And it all started back in the late 1850s when a wrecker named Ben Baker created two pineapple plantations, one on Key Largo, one on Plantation Key. He brought over thousands of baby pineapples, suckers, and slips. The pineapple's a bromeliad, and the way it kind of grows, it has little offshoots, and those offshoots can be planted and to create additional pineapples. And he brought thousands of them over from Cuba and planted them both on Plantation Key and in Key Largo. And Baker is really the first of the pineapple plantation growers, but would certainly not be the last, as his industry was pretty successful. It was difficult in those days to get your fruit to market, and they had to, you had to pick the pineapple when it was green still, and then ship it up the East Coast. There were several, things that could go wrong. Not enough wind, too much wind. The ship could stall out on the ocean, and then as all these pineapples are kind of packed in crates and put in the cargo holds, that ripening process is intensified, and there can be fermentation, and so generally it was about 25% of the crop would spoil by the time it got to market, providing the weather conditions were excellent and there wasn't too much wind to cause a wreck, or not enough wind to cause a boat to stall. But there was several. While Baker was the first, there would be several more pineapple industries. We've talked about Planter on Key Largo with the Johnsons and the Lowe family and Alberries, who are all planting pineapples as well as tomatoes and cucumbers and melons and other fruits. And in Upper Matacumbe, we have the Russells and the Pinders and the Parkers and all other families who were growing. But up on Elliott Key, which is a part of the northern Keys, a lot of people don't realize there are nearly 50 islands, 50 Florida Keys that are north of Key Largo. And Elliott Key is one of these islands. It's part of Biscayne National Park today, and it has a really interesting history of both pineapples and piracy. We have a question? Yes?
We do. Alan would like to know, how many crops a year could they harvest?
I don't know. With pineapples, because they're so slow growing, I would imagine it'd be one crop. I don't know for sure with pineapples, because they are so, they take several years before a plant can produce, and then it's a very slow growing. But I don't know if they had, parts of their fields that were, like we'll harvest lot A, and then this year and lot B, the latter half of the year. I'm not sure. It's a great question, and I don't have the answer for it. But it's something I've never seen any information kind of dissecting that aspect of it. But I will, Ellen and I will keep you in mind, because I know where to find you. And if that comes up, I'll definitely try to find an answer for you. But back to Elliott Key, we have several pineapple farmers up there. We have the Sweeting family, who had a whole industry up there. But also, what is Elliott Key might be best known for was the legendary pirate Black Caesar. And Black Caesar is a really interesting history. A lot of lore, a lot of legend, not a lot of facts to go into the story of Black Caesar. I've been doing a lot of reading about Black Caesar and trying to understand the story. I'm doing a talk about it next month where I'll break down all the different versions of the Black Caesar story, because there are several different versions of the story. And there is a nice kind of place in the history where the pineapple industry and Elliott Key and the pirate Black Caesar kind of intermingle for a little bit. And it comes at a really interesting point, because while Black Caesar is one of those pirates that people talk about, he's probably the most popular Florida Keys pirate. Never really existed. There's a lot of stories, a lot of legend, a lot of articles and books and magazines, things written about Black Caesar, but they all are different, and they all tell kind of a different theme on the same story. But there are several different versions of the legend of Black Caesar. The first one in the early years of the 1700s, where he is allegedly joins up becomes a trusted lieutenant with Blackbeard, and is then caught off guard when Blackbeard's sloop Adventure is attacked by Lieutenant Maynard, and Blackbeard is beheaded and killed. And this is when the first version of Black Caesar, who was allegedly this lieutenant, this big, strong, bloodthirsty pirate, was hanged, as well as I believe there were 18 pirates on board that ship at the time. And we'll talk more about, next month I'll talk more about all the holes in that story and how it really doesn't make sense in the end. But there was a second Black, and he was associated with Elliott Key, and then almost 100 years later, there is a second Black Caesar, a second strong pirate who was associated with Black Caesar in the latter half of the 1800s. And in some cases, the story is that even into the early 1900s, in one case, even as late as 1929, Black Caesar is still lording over the Florida Keys. Lots of different stories, lots of different avenues to kind of sort out. And I'm looking forward to taking an hour, 45 minutes, and kind of going through each one next month. But one really interesting part about this Black Caesar, Elliott Key, and pineapple story is there's a gentleman named Kirk Monroe who shows up in Coconut Grove, who is a writer and adventurer, and does a lot of firsthand visiting through the Florida Keys, and does a lot of writing, and his work is published. And there's one story published, I believe, 1887, where he talks about this plantation on Elliott Key, and he identifies one particular guy working in the field, this massive black dude who's got big arms, and he's bigger than everybody else and stronger than everybody else, which is really is part of the Black Caesar legend. He's always very big, very strong, bigger and stronger than everyone else around him. And for instance, this version of Black Caesar, who he identifies by name in the article as Black Caesar, carries twice as many. Where most of the guys working in the pineapple fields, these toters who are paid between $2 and $2.50 a day, picking these pineapples, they carry about 250 pounds of pineapples at a time. But this Black Caesar, this big Black Caesar dude, he carries 500 pounds because Black Caesar is always bigger and stronger than the next guy. But what's really interesting is the date of this iteration of the Black Caesar legend, because Black Caesar won early 1700s, 17 to 18, Blackbeard is killed, so his legend basically comes to end in 1718. And then we have this second version of the Black Caesar story, another escaped slave who leaves about 1805 during a slave revolt in Haiti, and then comes to Elliott Key and begins lording over the Florida Reef. But then we have this in the interim. We have this third version of Black Caesar in the late 1800s that doesn't really jibe with any of the piratical versions of the story, which I find really interesting because a lot of Black Caesar is a lot of legend, a lot of story, and not a lot of actual hands-on facts, things that you can look up and document. And with Kirk Monroe actually documenting a person identified as Black Caesar, it kind of calls into question, Black Caesar wasn't really just this one legendary pirate, but any large black man who was associated with Elliott Key or the Upper Keys kind of is nicknamed Black Caesar, and that kind of becomes his name. But it really is a fascinating legend and filled with Florida Keys lore, and I'm looking forward to taking my time next month and kind of going through each version of the Black Caesar story, because there's so many great aspects of it and so many great legend first-hand accounts, which are actually second-hand, third-hand accounts, but who are ascribed to individuals who in many cases don't exist themselves, and that's kind of a fun aspect of telling the story. And then we'll wind up my talk next month talking about an actual Black Caesar who is linked to, who can be linked to one of these versions of the legend. But there was one man, again a former slave, who is actually named Black Caesar, but he's in the wrong hemisphere. He's actually in the southern hemisphere, and we'll talk about that when we get into our my talk, Black Caesar. I believe it's legend, myth, man ? So thanks for tuning in, and hope you guys have hope you had a safe Labor Day and have a great rest of the week. We will be here next Monday talking about Blake will be doing another one of his updates on his aquariums and telling more stories or more information about our partnership with Marine Laboratory and Blake's great work here with us. And then next Tuesday, we will be back doing another Discover History. But then tomorrow night, we also have we're going back to our old schedule. We took last month off a little bit, with Cocktails with the Curator, which is another free webinar that you can sign up for tomorrow from 6 to 7. It's a free open air participation where you can log in and and it's virtual, so it's remote. You can ask questions, anything you want to ask. We'll have a special guest with us, Willie Dry, who's written a couple of great books, one on the Florida land boom from the 1920s, and the one more appropriate with the holiday weekend, his book, Storm of the Century, which talks about the Category 5, the very devastating Labor Day hurricane. That book is called Storm of the Century. So get your hurricane questions ready. Willie is a wealth of information on hurricanes and this phenomenon, and we'll have a great hour to chat and have a beer or two. I think Willie's talking about Scotch. But he'll be in North Carolina, and so we're looking forward to seeing everybody there. Be sure and sign up, and there's a link on our Facebook page, also a link at our webpage, which is keysdiscovery.com. I'll do another Facebook post tomorrow about the event, so hope you can join us there, and have a great week, and we'll see you soon.